This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, plus special features and reports with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
Destination Greenland. Good afternoon. Welcome to the broadcast. Vice President J.D. Vance is in Greenland today. He and his wife Usha are touring a remote U.S. military base some 750 miles from the North Pole. CBS's Holly Williams begins our coverage.
The Vice President's visit is being interpreted here as connected to President Trump's ambitions to take over Greenland as U.S. territory. With the U.S. and Russia vying for military dominance in the Arctic, Trump says he wants to take control of Greenland for security reasons.
We need Greenland, and the world needs us to have Greenland.
Victoria Coates is a security analyst at the Heritage Foundation.
It's important to note that the president hasn't said that they're just going to take it by force. I mean, the whole purpose of this visit is to make a connection with the people of Greenland, but make no mistake about it, this is critical to the national security interests of the United States.
If Russia were to ever attack the United States, that attack would most likely come from the Arctic. Denmark's rejected President Trump's interest in Greenland, saying the semi-autonomous Danish territory is not for sale. A massive earthquake caused chaos today in Southeast Asia. Substantial damage reported in Bangkok, Thailand, a city of 17 million. Swaying buildings sent thousands scrambling into the streets there. Dozens of workers got trapped when a skyscraper collapsed. Reporter Janice Mackey-Freyer.
The devastation in Bangkok, Thailand shows how powerful this earthquake was.
In nearby Myanmar, a mosque was reduced to rubble with worshippers inside. The airport in the capital of Myanmar had to close down because the air traffic control tower collapsed. The total number of dead is still not known. That earthquake measured 7.7 on the Richter scale. Severe flooding in South Texas. Half a year's worth of rain has fallen in just 2 days in the Rio Grande Valley. Rob Ray with Fox Weather.
The rain is coming down. Flash flood warnings and watches are in place.
A foot of rain's fallen the past 24 hours. Homes are flooded, schools canceled, dozens of water rescues near the border with Mexico. 6 months after Hurricane Helene, another headache in the Carolinas. Massive wildfires forcing hundreds from their homes.
You can see how intense the flames got when the fire came through here.
They're all over the place. There's some 500 fires affecting nearly 10,000 acres.
Western North Carolina has never had this much fuel on the forest floor within living memory.
Reporter Dave Malkoff says Hurricane Helene primed the region for this additional devastation.
Firefighters had problems getting in here because of all these trees that were pushed down by the hurricane. They have been sitting there for 6 months, drying out, becoming firewood.
Correspondent Marissa Parr continues our coverage from hard-hit Hendersonville in South Carolina.
We're hearing for the first time in South Carolina firefighting history, an air tanker was used to drop fire retardant to protect nearby houses. These fires in South Carolina have grown to a combined 10,000 acres. This as we're seeing new evacuations in North Carolina.
Those fires have been raging now for over a week in North and South Carolina. The same judge who ruled against President Trump's migrant flights to Central America, that judge is taking on another high-profile Trump case. Judge James Boasberg has ordered top defense officials not to destroy that group chat about a military operation in Yemen. A journalist inadvertently got looped in on the mission.
The president is said to be privately irritated about the incident, but is standing by White House National Security Advisor Mike Waltz and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. The White House vigorously debated whether Waltz should resign, but he never offered to, and the president never asked.
CBS's Ed O'Keefe. Critics contend the mistake jeopardized national security. The White House says no war plans were ever leaked. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is defending the Trump administration's decision to revoke visas from students who express pro-Palestinian views on America's college campuses.
Why would any country in the world allow people to come and disrupt? Now, we gave you a visa to come and study and get a degree. not to become a social activist that tears up our university campuses.
The Trump administration wants to deport a Cornell University graduate student who was twice suspended for organizing disruptive protests at that Ivy League school in Ithaca, New York. A Tesla takedown day of action happens tomorrow all over the world. More than 200 demonstrations are planned to protest Tesla owner Elon Musk, who is now a prominent player in the Trump administration.
What is being done by Elon Musk is, in my opinion, unconstitutional and illegal.
Ron Clower will take part in what he hopes is a peaceful protest in central New York on Saturday.
I hope the criminals that set fire to Teslas are arrested and put in jail. I do not agree with that at all.
But others, like this Tesla owner, think Musk is providing a great benefit to the U.S. government.
What people don't understand is Elon is probably our modern Einstein of our time, right? And that will only be more apparent after he's gone. And that's what, people around, a lot of people don't have that vision.
The Justice Department says any violence directed at the electric car company or Tesla owners will be considered an act of domestic terrorism. Elon Musk and his Doge team sat for an interview last night with Bret Baier at Fox News to explain how they're slashing government waste.
Well, this is a revolution. And I think it might be the biggest revolution in government since the original revolution. But at the end of the day, America is going to be in much better shape.
Musk says he's been tasked with reducing government spending by 15% across the board within 2 years. There was an epic overtime thriller last night in March Madness Sweet 16 action.
Williams corkscrews up, off, and down! Texas Tech has won!
The Texas Tech Red Raiders clawed back from a double-digit deficit in the second half to defeat the Arizona Razorbacks. More from reporter Sam Brock.
Do you remember when some fans were complaining this March Madness felt more like March Mildness? That took a turn last night. Texas Tech was down 16 points and stormed back to beat Arkansas, one of the biggest comebacks in Sweet 16 history, as you still have teams like Florida and Duke and Alabama looking absolutely the part of contenders.
The March Madness men's basketball tournament resumes tonight with top seeds Auburn and Houston both in action. We'll have more in sports with Randy coming up. Also ahead on the Noon Report, for Friday, Stefanik staying put, phone scam in Pennsylvania, and going electric in New York.
This is meteorologist Ken McKinley. Clouds will dominate this afternoon with temperatures likely above 50 in most spots. Could be some rain over western New York by later in the day. Rain spreading into the rest of New York through this evening, and maybe a shower or two in Pennsylvania. Warm temperatures in most areas for the weekend, but it will be cooler near Lake Ontario. Forecast details are coming up in about 10 minutes.
All right, Ken, thank you very much. Let's check the stories making news across New York and Pennsylvania. Authorities in Geneva, New York, have filed an 81-count indictment against a Rochester man who cops say sold drugs and guns to undercover authorities for months in a sting operation. Daniel Finkelstein with Wham! News.
Prosecutors say this all began as a quality of life complaint in Geneva and spiraled into a month-long multi-agency undercover investigation.
At a press conference yesterday, the Ontario County Sheriff lined a table with the items seized in that undercover investigation. They included bags of fentanyl pills, rifles, pistols, high-capacity magazines, and bullets. All were destined for the streets of Ontario County. District Attorney Jim Ritz.
In total, there were 14 firearms purchased and seized, 13 large-capacity feeding devices, and approximately 2,600 fentanyl pills.
The suspect, 28-year-old Ronnie Boswell, now under arrest, accused of selling drugs and guns to undercover cops. He is now facing the rest of his life behind bars. New York Republican Congresswoman Elise Stefanik is remaining in the House. President Trump has withdrawn her nomination for UN ambassador in order to preserve the GOP's slim majority in Congress.
I know the stakes as an elected representative. I have been proud to be a team player. The president knows that, and we are committed to delivering results on behalf of the American people. And as always, I'm committed to delivering results on behalf of my constituents.
Stefanik's 21st District congressional seat in New York's North Country might have remained vacant for months. President Trump won that district by more than 20 points back in November. The Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission says says its phone number is being used in a statewide scam. Scammers are manipulating the caller ID to make it appear as if the call you get is legitimate. It is not. The commission says the scammers are claiming that the victim's energy supplier is being switched, and the only way it can be stopped is to pay a cancellation fee. If you get a call like this, hang up immediately and call the police. The PUC says they will never make unsolicited phone calls demanding payment or threatening termination of service. New York State's electric vehicle mandate is fast approaching. More from Family Life's Dee Haley.
New York State has a law in place that may force you to only buy a new electric vehicle in the next 10 years. All automobiles, SUVs, and pickup trucks are to be free of fossil fuel emissions by the year 2035. That mandate actually begins at the end of this year, as model 2026 inventory must be 35% electric. The mandate increases every year, reportedly with limited flexibility. Critics of the mandate fear that it will result in an economic disaster for New York State and the local auto industry. The infrastructure to support the charging of all these new electric vehicles, especially in rural areas, is also in question. Dee Haley, Family Life News.
Thank you very much, Dee. Churches throughout Pennsylvania's Pocono Mountains are banding together with the borough of Stroudsburg, all in an effort to develop a long-term strategy for a community food pantry. Borough manager Larry Kopp tells WNEP.
A lot of people who come to the food bank here that don't have automobiles. So we need something here in town where people can walk to. We don't have a lot of empty real estate in the borough. So we've got our eyes open as we develop this food pantry.
Father Bruce Gow leads the Christ Episcopal Church in the Poconos. That church already serves meals to about 600 families twice a month.
I think it will open up a lot of options and opportunities for our nonprofits and for our community too. And it gives the community a sense of purpose, feeling that they can come together and do this mission together.
More than 10% of all Pennsylvania households experience food insecurity, meaning they don't know where their next meal is coming from. Sports is next. It's the 2-minute drill on the Family Life Noon Report.
Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Bob, it was a wild day in sports. Perhaps the wildest finish came in Chicago as the Bulls' Josh Giddey nailed a half-court buzzer beater to complete an incredible comeback and beat the Lakers 119-117. The Bulls trailed by 5 points with 12.6 seconds remaining, but back-to-back threes gave them a lead, but then the Lakers scored with 3 seconds left to set up Giddey's heroics. The Cavs, Mavs, Pacers, Heat, Thunder, Rockets, and Kings also picked up wins. Well, how about another amazing comeback? Texas Tech, we're talking college hoops now in the Sweet 16. They looked like they were done for. Arkansas led them by 13 points with less than 5 minutes to play. In fact, the Razorbacks had a double-digit lead for almost all of the game. But Deron Williams nailed a three with a few seconds left in regulation to send the game into overtime, and then he scored the go-ahead bucket with 7 seconds left, and Texas Tech won it 85-83. Florida, Duke, and Alabama also advanced. On the ice, the Sabres dismantled the Penguins 7-3. Buffalo scored 5 times in the second period. Major League Baseball got underway yesterday, and the Yankees beat the Brewers 4-2. Austin Wells went yard in the win. The Mets fell to the Astros 3-1. Josh Hader struck out Juan Soto with 2 runners on in the 9th to end the game. The Phillies went to extra innings to defeat the Nats 7-3. Pirates fell to Miami 5-4. That is a look at sports.
All right, Randy, thank you very much. Still to come on the Noon Report, the Capital Connection crew ready to talk shop about all that's happening in Albany and Harrisburg. Ken McKinley's got your weekend weather, and at the end of the broadcast, a Buffalo Bills-themed Hallmark Christmas movie.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. It was 15 years ago that authorities raided a West Philadelphia abortion clinic owned and operated by Dr. Kermit Gosnell. What they found led the investigators to dub the facility a, and I quote here, house of horrors. In addition to bloodstained furniture, urine-soaked walls, and cat feces everywhere, investigators discovered the remains of 47 children, both born and unborn, in containers, boxes, and jars. Gosnell's clinic targeted primarily poor minority women. Staff there testified that hundreds of infants had been born alive and were then killed, often through a method that Gosnell called snipping. Now described by Wikipedia as a serial killer, Gosnell was convicted of first-degree murder, involuntary manslaughter, 21 felonies, and 200 other legal violations. The grand jury report blamed a complete regulatory collapse, adding that at the time of Gosnell's arrest, nail salons in Philadelphia faced more regulation and oversight than abortion clinics did. Well, in a recent essay in First Things, Erica Anderson documented a different list of ethical horrors, but ones also birthed from underregulation and lack of oversight. Now, to be clear, the stories of the Wild West of big fertility are far more sanitized than Gosnell, nor are they as shocking as what was found in Gosnell's home and in his clinic, but that's only because nothing's that shocking. For example, a 51-year-old California man who lives with his elderly parents hired a surrogate to carry embryos that he quote-unquote adopted. You could also say bought. He now has custody, with no background check, no home study required, of 3 babies with whom he has no biological relationship. During the pregnancy, he asked the surrogate to abort one of the babies, but she refused and offered to raise the 3rd child herself. He refused that and took all 3 children with him, and the woman who carried them never saw them again. Bloomberg recently reported on a dramatic case of businessman Gary Lindbergh, whose ex-wife got custody of their 3 children. He wanted children who could never be taken away from him, so he conned young women into donating their eggs and signing over their parental rights in exchange for millions of dollars. So he now has custody, sole custody, of at least 12 children. In 2024, a Nashville fertility clinic was shut down after the Tennessee Attorney General launched an investigation into Dr. Jaime Vasquez, who allegedly neglected protocol, safety measures, and record keeping. Court records obtained by the Daily Mail established that embryo storage tanks at his clinic were not monitored for temperature. There was no alarm system to alert workers if the temperature reached an unsafe level. According to Anderson's essay, quote, patients lost access to their reserve embryos and weren't told whether they would ever get them back, end quote. And in 2023, a Virginia judge ruled that frozen embryos in dispute because of divorce proceedings are property. His decision relied in part on a 19th century law governing the treatment of slaves. And in 2021, the New York Times reported on a couple who was shocked to receive a storage fee invoice for frozen embryos they'd been told didn't exist for more than 20 years. Apparently, the couple had been told that the embryos they created through IVF had not survived. If, as Christians believe and science confirms, human life begins at conception, then every single human life deserves respect and protection. Like the abortion industry 15 years ago, the fertility industry is in need of far more regulation and far more oversight, not less. Even more, it's in need of a better legal framework, one built on the dignity and value of all human beings, not just some. And without it, the list of ethical horrors from this industry will only continue to grow. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint. For more resources like this one, go to breakpoint.org.
Thank you, John. Outside we go, Ken McKinley.
Good afternoon. A good deal of cloudiness on through the afternoon across the region. Temperatures getting up above 50 in most spots. Some light rain is starting to show up over western New York by later in the afternoon, and more rain is spreading into the rest of New York State as we head through this evening, and perhaps into some portions of western Pennsylvania as well. The precipitation will diminish later at night. Temperatures beginning to warm up overnight in most areas, and a very warm day likely for most spots tomorrow with some clouds and a bit of sun. The exception to that will be north of the New York Thruway, where more clouds and rain are likely, along with cooler temperatures. In fact, the temperatures cooling off later in the day and tomorrow night could even lead to the possibility of a little bit of freezing rain right along the Lake Ontario shoreline, but most of the region will remain above freezing. For Sunday, some more rain or shower activity in many areas, and temperatures remaining fairly mild in most spots, coldest farther to the north.
All right, Ken, thank you very much. It is Friday, folks. Congratulations, you made it. The 28th of March, and this is the Noon Report on Family Life. And welcome back to another edition of Capital Connection. Fridays during the Noon Report, we give you direct connection to all that's happening in Albany and Harrisburg with the experts on the issues at the state capitals. They are, as always, Michael Geer with the Pennsylvania Family Institute and Jason McGuire at New York Families. Jason, got a little pep in your step today after that wonderful rally last week at the New York State Capitol. Give us a little more detail about Legislative Day and what you hope that event will accomplish at the state capitol.
You know, it's always a good day to bring hundreds of people up to Albany to be in the State House, to be reminded that you're not alone, and not only for the people that attended, but for myself. I mean, there are very few people up there that really share our values, and so it is an encouraging day for me personally. I was encouraged by the words of Bunny Pounds, who challenged us, Bunny from Christians Engaged, to pray, vote, and engage in every election. Brandon Showalter from the Christian Post really was updating us on the state of the transgender issue all across the country and what's happening in that movement and how we can push back against that and help hold up the dignity of every person created in the image of God, male and female. But really, the ultimate thing for us was going over to the War Room, which is in the second floor of the state capitol. It's outside the governor's offices, and really for an hour, praying for state government, singing hymns, songs of worship. Over 100 people gathered there just to intercede for our state, and it was a powerful time.
Amen. I'm proud to be a part of it, too. Michael, let's talk about something that, we talk about every year in New York, but now we've got to talk about it in Pennsylvania because there's been legislation introduced in Harrisburg that would permit physician-assisted suicide. This is modeled after Oregon's so-called Death with Dignity Act. Explain a little bit what this legislation is all about.
Yeah, this bill was introduced just this past Friday on March 21st by a number of progressive Democrats in the House of Representatives. Lead sponsor is Tariq Khan, who's a Muslim, is explicitly against the Muslim religion to support physician-assisted suicide. But there are some who might call themselves Christians who also support it, and that's very problematic. When we look at this issue, I look at New York and the great work that Jason has done up there and fighting it off there in his state, and we here in Pennsylvania will be doing the same. We don't expect this to move in the General Assembly ultimately. There still is significant opposition, and it won't go anywhere if it gets out of the House, and we don't expect it will. It's a bad idea. We look at Canada and we see growth in physician-assisted suicide, as they called it, by about 30% every year since it's been legalized, and even some countries there are now allowing children to participate in it. It's awful, and we will fight it.
That is a slippery slope if there ever was one. Jason, Governor Hochul signed legislation recently that expands this SHIELD law. Some call it the Abortion Provider Protection Act. Why is she so keen on providing this anonymity to those involved in the abortion industry?
Yeah, you have to recognize that with the progressives and with the left, there is a very vocal minority of the base there that really is demanding these kinds of things. And so when you see at the federal level various pro-life actions that are moving, there's a reaction here at the state level. I just don't see how it helps women's health and safety to conceal the names of doctors or the medical practice that is prescribing some of these drugs that cause abortions. It's allowing cases such as in Louisiana, where this girl received these drugs that her mother slipped her, essentially, caused some medical problems for her, and that didn't help that young girl's safety. And I just don't see how it's going to help women in New York to be concealing this kind of data. We don't do it for any other kind of medication or drug. Why do it for abortion drugs?
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of this issue, Michael, there was a really just gut-wrenching story out of Lancaster County recently that kind of highlights the rot of the abortion industry. In this case, the chemical abortion industry, which is a growing enterprise. Pardon the graphic nature of this story, but I think it's important that we understand what happened here and why this happened in Lancaster County.
Yeah, so the case involves a 17-year-old girl in Lancaster County. Authorities discovered a baby that was buried in the backyard of her home, and when they investigated further, it turns out that this girl was pregnant, about 21 weeks pregnant. She went to an abortion clinic with her mother. They told her the baby is too far along and we can't do it. And so then the mother helped to get her mail order chemical abortion drugs. And she took them and then was shocked when she gave birth to basically a live baby. She expressed that, it's breathing, and was so troubled by it, but then just ended up burying it in the backyard. So there's investigation and prosecution going on in the case. It just shows the terrible devastation that comes with chemical abortions, not only a baby dying in that situation, but a young lady who I think will be scarred for life.
Yeah. Jason, a study out, and you're talking about this on your website, we'll give that at the end, seems to contradict the narrative regarding gender dysphoria. I know you had Brandon Showalter at the Christian Post last week talk about this issue so eloquently. This idea of gender-affirming care may actually be harming, not helping, the mental health of the people that seek out this treatment. Explain that, if you would.
Yeah, this study really runs contradictory to the narrative we so often hear. But it's a recent study published in the Journal of Sexual Medicine, and it suggests that gender-affirming surgery may harm, not help, the mental health of persons with gender dysphoria. Specifically, the study indicates that people with gender dysphoria who undergo gender-affirming surgery have demonstrably worse mental health outcomes than people with gender dysphoria who do not. And again, that just runs so contradictory to the narrative that we hear. We are often told these people have to have the so-called sex change surgeries or the gender-affirming care to really feel good about themselves, to feel right in their bodies, when in reality, the studies are now indicating something different. And it shouldn't surprise us because God's created us as male and female. It's true at every single chromosome level of our body. And so if we are rejecting that at that molecular level, certainly there's going to be problems at a higher level as well.
Michael, let's talk about President Trump's alma mater, UPenn. He's withholding $175 million in aid from that school. And of course, if UPenn rings a bell, that is the school where Leah Thomas used to swim, formerly known as Will Thomas. Do you think this action to deal with the trans athletes in women's sports will be enough to convince UPenn to change its ways?
Well, I certainly hope so, and I think probably at least they'll make some window dressing on it to suggest that they're making the change. But we've seen consistently resistance in places like Maine, even the Philadelphia School District, that face a loss of federal fundings, continue to press forward and to say ideologically they think that transgender people should be able to participate in these sports. So I think that the pressure from Washington will make a difference to some degree, but it's an indication that we at the grassroots level need to continue to be involved and to get even local school districts involved to push for fairness in girls' sports.
All right, well, Jason, they're burning the midnight oil in Albany. The New York State budget is due. I think it's over $250 billion, but who's counting, right? It's due on Tuesday. Most people are saying it's going to be way late this year. Is that what you're saying? And if it is way late, what are the sticking points that are holding it up this year?
Yeah, I would count me with most people. I think that budget is going to be late again, and there's four key things that seem to be holding it up. The first is involuntary commitment. There's a plan to try to put people, involuntarily commit them to psychiatric facilities. For example, you think of homeless people on the streets with some mental health issues. Involuntary commitment is a key issue that is a sticking point in the budget. There's also the mask ban. They're raising it kind of late. Governor Kathy Hochul wants to put a ban on the wearing of masks, and there's a split in the Democratic Party. There are some that want to fight anti-Semitism by saying you can't wear the masks. There are some people in minority communities that feel this will be unfairly applied to their community, and so there's a split in the Democrats over whether or not to ban the wearing of face masks. There's a cell phone ban regarding students in schools, and again, a split. Should we allow phones during lunches, or is it truly bell to bell? Students will not have their phones in the classrooms. And finally, discovery. That's an issue that's a criminal justice issue, but this is coming up now because, well, frankly, it's become very, very difficult to prosecute people in the state in certain situations. And again, there's a split in the Democrats over how far to go to protect criminals in this state versus those prosecutors that are calling for change to discovery reform.
And then finally, Michael, we've already talked about the proliferation of the trans agenda in our culture today. Nowhere is it more seen than in the world of women's sports. The Pennsylvania Senate Education Committee has recognized this and taken up a bill called the Save Women's Sports Act. I know you support this. If it does fail, which it likely will, how can Republicans use this as momentum in the next election?
Well, it's Senate Bill 9. It's a great piece of legislation, actually similar to one that did pass a few years ago, but then was vetoed by then Governor Tom Wolf. This bill, we expect to make it through the Senate, but there's not a lot of likelihood that the progressive Democrats in the House of Representatives will see it go further. But it is a popular issue, as you just bring it up when you go to election time. This is an 80-20 issue. The majority of Pennsylvanians support, and I think it will be a campaign issue if it doesn't get through the legislature and to the governor's desk.
All right, remember, it's Senate Bill 9. If you want to learn more about that issue or any other in Pennsylvania, Michael, you have a wonderful website where folks can learn more about the Pennsylvania Family Institute. If you would, what is that?
PAFamily.org.
And Legislative Day wrapping up last week. You want to recap on that or any other issue in New York? A lots to talk about in the run-up to the budget deadline. Jason, what's your website, sir?
NewYorkFamilies.org.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. Capital Connection comes your way Fridays during the Noon Report. You can subscribe, listen to, and share this feature as well as all our original podcasts at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or FamilyLife.org.
Good afternoon. A good deal of cloudiness on through the afternoon across the region. Temperatures getting up above 50 in most spots. Some light rain is starting to show up over western New York by later in the afternoon, and more rain is spreading into the rest of New York State as we head through this evening, and perhaps into some portions of western Pennsylvania as well. The precipitation will diminish later at night. Temperatures beginning to warm up overnight in most areas, and a very warm day likely for most spots tomorrow with some clouds and a bit of sun. The exception to that will be north of the New York Thruway, where more clouds and rain are likely, along with cooler temperatures. In fact, the temperatures cooling off later in the day and tomorrow night could even lead to the possibility of a little bit of freezing rain right along the Lake Ontario shoreline, but most of the region will remain above freezing. For Sunday, some more rain or shower activity in many areas, and temperatures remaining fairly mild in most spots, coldest farther to the north.
I can thank you. Fine at noon, a Buffalo Bills themed Hallmark movie is in the works for Christmas. It's called A Holiday Touchdown, a Bills love story, and it's been included in the Hallmark Channel's Countdown to Christmas movie lineup this coming December. These members of the Bills Mafia tell WIVB they can't wait to see it.
I think it would be really neat to see like a love story between, two fans starting at a tailgate and then, going into a game and just kind of following almost like a fan perspective on it.
Well, I mean, if it's anything like the Bills, it'll be heartbreaking and sad most of the time, but maybe hopeful towards now.
Yeah, hopeful. That's what we're hoping for, right? The details of the plot, which Bills players may make a cameo in the film, and when the movie will air, all of that's yet to be determined, but we can tell you that a Bills love story is coming to the Hallmark Channel this Christmas. And that's our world. The world we live in, Friday, March 28th. Have a wonderful weekend. I'm Bob Price. Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at FamilyLife.org.